They said the curse began long before anyone alive could remember, before cameras could trap a moment in still frames, before doctors brought children into the world under the hum of sterile lights and the smell of disinfectant. It was a tale too old for paper, living only in whispers traded under all lamps, passed from the lips of trembling grandmothers to the ears of wide-eyed daughters who would someday whisper again.
In the Khemjira family, daughters were blessings. They carried life forward, lived to see their grandchildren, and were mourned only in old age. Sons, however, were doomed from the very moment they drew their first breath. The rule was absolute. A son would die before his 20th birthday. There were no exceptions. The stories were too numerous to dismiss, and too consistent to ignore. There was the boy who fell from a mango tree in his uncle's yard, landing on soft grass, but breaking his neck, though he had fallen from the clouds. Another had been healthy all his life until, one spring morning, he woke with a fever, so fierce it burned the light from his eyes in 3 nights. Another had been swimming in calm river waters when something unseen dragged him under. His friend said there was no current that day. Each death had the strange symmetry of fate, as though the curse itself had fingers and had learned the shape of each boy's throat. By the time Supansa, Khem's mother, was old enough to understand the stories, she had already buried 2 brothers. She remembered the quiet of the house after each one was gone, the way no one laughed for weeks, the way her mother's hands trembled when she prepared rice. She learned early not to ask why, because no one could answer. Instead, she learned to ask who's next. Her father avoided the question, but her mother answered in the old way, the curse chooses. So when Supansa found herself pregnant at 28, the family's fear began to take shape long before the child did. Her mother, now a grandmother in waiting, began burning incense daily. The small house smelled constantly of sandalwood, thick and clinging in the lungs. The elders placed talismans in the corners of the bedroom where Supansa slept, charms wrapped in red thread, bowls of rice and salt meant to confuse spirits. Still, fear worked its way under her skin. She could not stop imagining a boy's small coffin, could not unsee the old photographs of dead brothers and uncles. The child came into the world on a rainy June evening. The sky had been the color of bruises all day, and by nightfall, the air had grown heavy enough to hold its breath. Thunder rolled across the village as the midwife worked, her face damp with both heat and worrying. When the newborn's cry broke through the storm, Supansa was drenched in sweat, her muscles trembling with exhaustion. Her heart was loud in her ears, but one question rose above the rest. Is it a boy or a girl? She asked, her voice thin. The midwife hesitated, her eyes flicking to the elders gathered in the small, humid room. She swallowed. It's a boy, she said at last. The room went still, save for the rain tapping on the tin roof. Supansa's mother lowered her gaze to the floor. Someone, she didn't know who, muttered a prayer, but Supansa did not cry. Her voice, when she spoke, was steady and cold as a blade. No, she said. This is my daughter. Her name is Khemjira. The midwife blinked. Khemjira. It means forever safe, Supansa replied. And so the curse was not broken, but challenged. From that day, no one outside the family was told the truth. Khem grew up never knowing there was anything unusual about his name. To him, Khemjira was simply his. The syllables fit in his mouth, rolled off his friends' tongues when they called for him to join a game of takraw in the dusty courtyard after school. Sometimes the older boys laughed and called him little sister, but Khem only laughed with them, never realizing the joke was built on a hidden truth. His mother was careful, so careful, Supantsa never allowed him to climb the higher branches of the tamarind tree. Even when the other boys scrambled up without a thought, she would walk him to school and stand just far enough away that he wouldn't complain, but close enough to see every step he took. When Khem asked why she never let him swim in the river, she only smiled and said, "The current is tricky here." "You scared me," she whispered, and he thought he saw her lips move again in silent prayer. Still, there were moments she couldn't control. At 8 years old, he tripped on the temple steps during Songkran, hitting his head hard enough to black out for a breathless moment. He woke to find his mother's face inches from his, her eyes wide with a terror far greater than the injury deserved. By 12, he began to notice the way the older men in the family looked at him, sidelong, guarded, as though they were waiting for something to happen. At family gatherings, his uncles would pat his shoulder and then quickly pull their hands back, as though touching him too long might tempt fate. He didn't understand it then, but the weight of their stares followed him everywhere.